On this episode of What's Going On with Shipping, massive flooding has isolated the port of Vancouver, Canada. I am your host, Sal Mercogliano. I'm the chair of the Department of History, Criminal Justice, and Political Science here at Campbell University. You can see it right here in beautiful North Carolina, former merchant mariner and an instructor in maritime industry policy, maritime history, and maritime security. So today I want to talk about the events that are unfolding regarding the port of Vancouver, Canada. Huge rainstorms have washed out major roads outside of Vancouver, linking Vancouver to the rest of Canada, including washing away railways that are essential for the movement of grain and exports to and from the port of Vancouver. So let's take a look at those stories. Here are the stories by CBC right now talking about the dispatch of the military to British Columbia to help with the cleanup and rebuild after the historic floods. You're seeing roads washed out, massive amounts of damage estimated, they're talking about here, could exceed $1 billion to restore all the transportation. The flooding was absolutely astronomical when you see it. The amount of rain that dumped into the region of British Columbia was just incredible. They talked about this being like a 10,000 year storm. We saw this story. This is the Maritime Executive story. There really hasn't been a lot of stories about this. One of the reasons I want to talk about this is because we haven't seen that many stories about it. This is a Maritime Executive story, which is talking about the Port of Vancouver's rail service washed out in British Columbia. This came out a few days ago. I have not even been able to get to it since then because there's so much news going on. It's crazy the amount of shipping news that's underway, but I do have followers in Canada, and I want to make sure I cover this because it's that important. BC Transportation on Twitter has got great images of this, and you'll see right here, I'll show you this image right here because I think this is a good one that demonstrates the potential cause. Talked to someone just a little while ago, and the word could be railways could open up within a few days. The question is the assessment and getting in there to determine whether the railways are safe for movement. Highways may be a little bit different, but railways may be short-term, may be able to get them up and running within the next few days. Some fascinating images here of barges coming aground in Vancouver because of the waterfront, the amount of water that you saw in this. Again, there's another maritime executive story that features this. This is a story I really want to highlight. Expert fuel alternatives for cargo vessels at Vancouver Port as rail links remain broken. For a port already dealing with congestion and traffic jams prior to this month's atmospheric river rainstorm disaster, the cutting off of rail links to Vancouver presents another major hurdle that provides few alternatives for a quick resolution. According to the Port of Vancouver's eHub data, this is their electronic data that you can access, there are currently 66 vessels in the port, 26 at berth and 40 at anchorage awaiting a berth opening. Of these, there are now a whopping 20 grain vessels, 4 at berths and 16 at anchorages waiting to bring Canadian products to market in Asia. Let me be clear about a couple of things. Even if the rail opens tomorrow, you have the impact. The impact is going to resonate down the supply chain because grain is sitting on rail sidings waiting to get in. Another CBC story talking about tons of Manitoban grain sitting on trains after British Columbia flooding cuts off the rail lines. Talking about 100,000 tons of prairie grain stuck in the rail cars because you cannot move. This is going to cause shortages in the port. The grain elevators will deplete down. They're talking about the fact that the grain elevators are in good shape at this point, but they're going to start being reduced. Elevators are around 75% full after farmers harvested about 48 million tons of grain this year compared to 70 to 75 million in a normal year. The storage capacity won't last if the delay drags on longer than a week. And that's what the concern is. If this goes on beyond a few days, those grain carriers may not be able to load, and that has implications for delivering food worldwide. Let's go to the Port of Vancouver. This is the Port of Vancouver site, and this is their operations updates. They're doing updates repeatedly on this. I'll have this in the show notes so you can go to it. And one of the things that they're talking about, obviously, is the issue regarding rails. So right here, declared a provincial state of emergency effective November 17th. State of emergency to the entire province for an initial 14-day period may be extended. Goes down here. The federal government is providing additional personnel and resource to assist in flood-stricken areas. The rail lines between Kamloops, I'm not sure how to say that, I apologize, Canada, and Vancouver remain closed as both the CN, the Canadian National and Canadian Pacific crews and engineering teams continue to clear debris and conduct repairs at multiple locations. So that is the big issue right here. I want to come over to this map. There we go. And show you what they're talking about right here. This is a map of Class 1 railways. There's Vancouver. There's Kamloops or Kamloops. I'm not sure, again, how to pronounce that, so I apologize. But the severing is right through in this area here in the Fraser River Valley region. And those rail lines are essential. If you zoom out in this map, one of the things you'll see is how that single stretch there connects all the way into Alberta, into Saskatchewan, into Manitoba. So those railways are really essential. You have a southern railway that comes from the Burlington North Santa Fe, but routing through Canada, out of Canada through the United States would be extremely difficult. On the flip side, a lot of this rail traffic that comes out of Vancouver is carried over into the Midwest on the Canadian railway system. So a lot of railway traffic coming out of Vancouver does go into Chicago via this route here through the Dakotas and Minnesota down into the Chicago route. So this is really a major issue that's facing Canada right now. And if this goes on beyond a few days, it's going to have an impact. Let's talk about the port. This is marine traffic. So one of the things that's really important to know is that in many ways, Canada is doing something very similar to what the US is doing, especially in LA and Long Beach. So for example, if you come down here to LA and Long Beach, one of the things we talked about in a previous video was the fact that LA and Long Beach is diminishing the number of vessels here in the anchorage, close in and out here in the drift zone. Well, I did a tweet today where I talked about this. The Port of LA and Long Beach is reporting less vessels waiting to come in. That's because those vessels are all the way out here. Here's the CMA CGA Topaz, over 300 miles out to sea, stopped and drifting. Add to it vessels like, let's see right here, there was a couple of them sitting out here. Here's the MSC Alina, bound for Long Beach, underway using engines 9 knots. Here's Everladen sitting, oh, actually, she is actually heading the other way. There was another Ever vessel out here. There you go, Everfine. She's inbound to LAX, due in on the 26th at 0.6 knots. She is literally just drifting out there over 300 miles out to sea. Here's the Maersk Erdene doing the same thing. There's a couple other vessels out here. There was a Matson vessel out here doing the same thing. We saw, I found it earlier, but off the coast of Vancouver, you see the same thing. Here are vessels sitting here waiting to come into Vancouver, basically out here drifting. Terrible place to be drifting, by the way. Can I be clear? The North Pacific coming into wintertime. This is potentially the reason for the Zim Kingston fire. But let's go into Vancouver. Here is Vancouver. There are 4 major terminals in Vancouver. There's the Centerm, Deltaport, DP World Fraser, and the Vanterm. And when you come into Vancouver, you'll see several of them. So right here, here is one of the terminals. This is a combined container and bulk terminal. You can see the vessels up against the pier here. There's the container terminals. Here's the ore grain coming out. It's actually ore terminal coming out of there. If you go up the Fraser River here, here's the Fraser terminal. You can see bulk carrier right there against the pier. Here's some container vessels up against the berth. And if you really want to see the anchorage, what the impediment may become is right here in Vancouver. So in Vancouver, here's the container terminals. Again, Vancouver does not have a lot of terminals, large scale terminals. Here's Anna Maersk up against the berth. Over the APL Columbus up against the berth. Come out over to Across the river, you will see the grain and bulk berths along the north side of the river. See vessels up here at the terminals, grain, silos, coal, ore, all those elements. But out in the anchorage off of Vancouver, here are the vessels all sitting, waiting to get in. So the shutdown in the port has ramifications going onward. Currently, containers are being discharged from vessels, but they can't be railed inward. The highway system is also closed. They just opened it up to get some people out of Hope, but the highway system is not fully opened up, meaning container vessels will have to wait at Vancouver. There's not a lot of storage space on the ground to discharge containers. Grain and ore is being loaded on vessels for movement. However, new grain and new ore is sitting at sidings waiting to get into the port of Vancouver. Here you have an issue of weather relations, destroying rail and highway systems, and the west coast of the United States and Canada both suffering from this situation. So wanted to update you on this. I hope to get new information probably provided in the update on Monday on the What the Ship episode. So be sure to tune in for that. If you are not a subscriber, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new episodes as they come out. Give it a like, thumbs up, leave a comment, share it across social media. And if you can, please contribute to the Patreon page that allows me to do these videos and keep you informed. If I missed something, got something wrong, I potentially did. I'm pretty sure I pronounced Kamloops wrong. Please let me know. Happy to take criticism. Don't have to be mean. We're all learning in this. And my goal here is to educate everybody in the importance of shipping, particularly this instance right here, where Vancouver finds itself now isolated out, not able to move goods as efficiently and as effectively as it can. While there are alternative routes to move goods, and I should mention, and I didn't, and I really should because I will get dinged about this, there is another port that is available up in Prince Rupert. And if you look at the rail chart right here, I'll show it to you right here. Prince Rupert is another terminal up here at the very end of British Columbia, just short of getting into Canada. It's right here. Here's the terminal. It has a rail line. You'll see ore and grain again right there. That's obviously looks more like ore. There's some container facilities. This is grain right here. Other options for using it, but Prince Rupert is not as elaborate a site as Vancouver. It's a much longer distance. It's at the end of that long rail line up into northern British Columbia. So thoughts and prayers with everybody in British Columbia, hoping the highway and rail line is fixed quickly so that trade can resume. And more importantly, that grain sitting inside in vessels, in rail cars can get to the silos for loading on board. So until our next episode, Sal, signing off.